A 16-year-old artist, Marcus, is jailed for a crime he didn't commit by a racist judge. His dad, the U.S. Attorney General, fights to free him, exposing a corrupt system. Marcus walks free. But what's next? Follow the story, you won't believe what happens. The courtroom in Cleveland, Ohio, Marcus Hayes, 16, stood by his public defender, wrists cuffed, orange jumpsuit hanging loose. His eyes stayed on the floor, his silence heavy since the night of his arrest. Laura Hayes, his mother, sat in the back, hands clenched, eyes red from sleepless nights. She'd called every lawyer in town. None took the case, or their fees were beyond her reach as a single mom working double shifts. Her son, accused of robbing a GameStop, was innocent. She knew it. Marcus was at the library that evening, not causing trouble. Judge Harold Vance sat high behind his desk, flipping through a file with a scowl. His glasses caught the light as he glanced at Marcus, lips curling. "State of Ohio versus Marcus Hayes," he said, voice cold. "Guilty of armed robbery." He leaned forward, sneering. "You kids think you own these streets, huh? Not in my courtroom." His words dripped with contempt, aimed not just at Marcus, but at every young black face he'd seen. Laura gasped, her heart lurching. "He was at the library," she shouted, but Vance cut her off. "Sit down or I'll have you removed." He dismissed the public defender's mention of library footage with a wave. "Your client's kind always has an excuse," he said, his tone laced with prejudice. The evidence, a blurry photo, a glove, was flimsy, but Vance didn't care. "Life in prison, no parole," he declared, gavel slamming. Laura cried out, "No, Marcus didn't do it!" Her legs gave way and she collapsed, hands hitting the floor, sobs breaking free. Vance smirked. "Get a grip, lady. This isn't a soap opera." He turned away, ignoring her pain. The guards stood still, the bailiff looked bored, and the defender, a weary man named Tom Grayson, shuffled his notes. Useless. Marcus didn't move, didn't speak. In his cuffed hands he held a folded sketch, edges worn. It was a charcoal drawing of Laura, reading in their Elmwood Avenue apartment, her face calm. He'd drawn it days before the arrest, a piece meant for his art scholarship portfolio. Now it was all he had. The bailiff grabbed his arm. "Move it, kid." Marcus didn't resist. As they pulled him toward the side door, he glanced back at Laura, still on the floor, reaching for him, lips trembling in a silent plea. Vance's voice rang out, calling the next case. "Docket 2041, let's go." The door shut with a thud, cutting Marcus off from his mother. Inside, Laura's cries echoed, but Vance was already onto the next file. "Another thug off the streets," he muttered to the clerk, his words sharp with bias. Sophia Torres, the young court clerk, typed quickly, her stomach churning. She'd worked under Vance for years, seen his pattern, fast trials, harsh sentences, always for boys like Marcus. She'd noticed missing files, traffic cam footage, a report on the GameStop camera, but stayed silent, afraid to speak up. Marcus's life was now a case number, his future erased in minutes. The sketch in his hand felt heavier, a reminder of who he was. They could cage him, but not his spirit. In the hallway, guards pushed him forward, but Laura's face stayed in his mind. She'd fight for him, somehow. Back in the courtroom, Laura struggled to her feet, wiping tears. She didn't know how to save her son, but giving up wasn't an option. Sophia glanced at her, guilt flickering. She'd seen Vance's cruelty before, but this case hit harder. Something had to change. Outside, Cleveland's streets buzzed, unaware of the injustice inside. But for Marcus, Laura, and soon others, this was just the beginning of a battle against a system built to break them. Vance leaned back, smug, thinking he'd won another round. He didn't know a storm was coming, one that would unravel his career and expose his prejudice. Before the cuffs, the jumpsuit, and the courtroom that stole his future, Marcus Hayes was just a 16-year-old kid with a sketchbook. He lived with his mom, Laura, in a small apartment on Elmwood Avenue in Cleveland, Ohio. One bedroom, a sagging couch, a tiny kitchen. It wasn't much, but it was home. For Marcus, that was enough. He wasn't loud or flashy, not the kid who raised his hand in class or ran with a big crew. Marcus noticed things others missed, the way his math teacher's jaw tightened on rough days, how sunlight hit the school's brick wall at dusk. He kept it all in his head, then poured it onto paper. Art was his language, his way of seeing the world. Marcus, 16, was Marcus carried his sketchbook everywhere: lunch, bus stop, even the corner store. Its pages held faces: classmates, strangers on the street, Laura dozing on the couch with a book. Other pages captured scenes: a cracked sidewalk, the neon sign at Carter's Market, a stray dog by the park. He didn't post his drawings online or show them off. They were, for him, a record of what mattered. School wasn't his thing, but the Carver Library 6 blocks away was his sanctuary. Tucked in a back corner was an old scanner, slow but reliable. Marcus went there after school to digitize his best work: portraits, city scenes, abstracts. Clara Thompson, the librarian, always greeted him with a smile. "Back again, Marcus? Those art schools are going to fight over you," she'd say, her voice warm. She meant it. Clara was the first person besides Laura who called him gifted. Marcus would nod, shy, and mumble, "Thanks, Ms. Clara," before getting to work. He scanned each piece carefully, naming files with precision: Mom_reading_3, Elmwood_dusk. They were, for his application to the National Art Scholars Program, a full-ride scholarship to top art schools. The odds were tough. Thousands applied. But Marcus believed in his shot. It was the biggest dream he'd ever chased. One day, his English teacher, Miss Rivera, handed him a sealed recommendation letter for the scholarship. "You've got something special, Marcus," she said. He didn't tell anyone, just slipped the letter into his sketchbook's pocket, feeling its weight like a promise. That evening he walked home slow, the letter a quiet victory. At Carter's Market he grabbed a sandwich for himself and a small pack of strawberries, Laura's favorite. He bought them whenever he had spare change from his part-time job at the library. When he got home, Laura was folding laundry, the TV humming low. He set the strawberries on the table. "For you," he said. Her tired face softened. "You always remember," she said, smiling. Marcus pulled out his pencil, sketching her as she folded a faded shirt, her hands steady, brow creased in focus. He didn't show her the drawing. It was for his scholarship portfolio, under a section he'd labeled home. It was a Thursday, late afternoon, the kind of day where the sun felt warm and worries faded. Marcus had just finished at the library, scanning a new portrait of Laura. Everything checked out. Files saved, sketchbook packed. He felt good, like the scholarship was within reach. On his way home, he stopped at Carter's Market, same as always. He picked up chips, a candy bar, and another pack of strawberries. "Working on something big?" Mr. Carter asked from behind the counter, ringing him up. Marcus nodded. "Scholarship stuff," Carter grinned, handing over change. "You'll get it, kid." Marcus stepped outside, plastic bag in one hand, sketchbook under his arm. The air was crisp, the street alive with kids biking and cars rolling by. He took a deep breath, thinking of the scholarship, of Laura's proud smile when he'd tell her the news. For a moment, everything felt possible. Marcus Hayes, 16, had barely taken 10 steps from Carter's Market on Elmwood Avenue when tires screeched. 2 police cruisers slammed to a stop, lights flashing, no sirens. Just raw force. "On the ground, hands where we can see them," a voice barked. Marcus froze, heart pounding, plastic bag in one hand, sketchbook under his arm. "Get down now," another officer shouted, harsher. Rough hands grabbed his arms, yanking him backward. The bag hit the pavement, chips crushed, strawberries burst, juice staining the sidewalk red. His sketchbook fell, pages flapping, a drawing of his mom, Laura, torn across the middle. Marcus's chest slammed against the concrete, air rushing out. Cold handcuffs snapped tight, biting his wrists. "Young black male, blue hoodie, matches the description," one officer said to the other, radio crackling. Marcus's mind raced. He wasn't running, wasn't hiding. "I was at the library," he said, voice shaking. "Check the footage. I didn't do anything." The taller cop snorted. "Save it for downtown." They didn't ask his name, didn't check his ID, didn't touch the backpack with his scholarship files. Marcus tried again, desperate. "Miss Clara at the library, she saw me." A hand shoved his head down. "Shut up, kid." The concrete scraped his cheek, gritty and hot. He remembered Laura's words, calm but firm. "If they stop you, don't fight, don't run, just stay alive." So he stayed still, even as his heart screamed. The officers hauled him up, tossing him into the cruiser's back seat. Through the window, Marcus saw his sketchbook on the sidewalk, pages fluttering, a portrait of Laura smudged in the dirt. The strawberries bled red trails toward the curb. The car pulled away, and his world shrank to the hum of the engine. They said it was a robbery on 47th Street, a GameStop hit minutes earlier. Witness saw a guy in a blue hoodie running south, one cop said. Marcus's hoodie was blue, but he hadn't been near 47th. He'd been at the Carver Library, scanning sketches for his scholarship. No one cared. You fit the description, the driver said. Like that settled it. At the station, Marcus sat in a holding cell, cuffs still on, the fluorescent lights buzzing. His fingers twitched, aching for a pencil. Hours dragged until a guard shoved him toward a meeting room. Tom Grayson, his public defender, waited there, gray suit wrinkled, eyes tired. He barely looked up from his phone, flipping through a thin file. Marcus Hayes, robbery charge. Anything you want to say before we go in? Marcus swallowed. I was at the library when it happened. Miss Clara saw me. There's footage. I'm applying for an art scholarship. I don't... Grayson cut him off, scribbling a note. Yeah, okay, we'll mention it. His voice was flat, like he'd heard it all before. They've got a photo and a glove with a partial print. Doesn't look good. He didn't ask about the library, didn't meet Marcus's eyes. 10 minutes later, the guard called them out. Marcus's stomach twisted. Grayson hadn't listened, hadn't cared. The scholarship, the sketches, his whole life. It was slipping away and no one was fighting for him. He thought of Laura, probably still at work, unaware her son was caged. He clutched the memory of her face, the sketch he'd drawn of her reading. It was gone now, lost on that sidewalk. The guard pushed him toward the courtroom door. Move it! Marcus's legs felt heavy, but he walked, head high. He wasn't a thief, wasn't what they said, but the system didn't care about truth. It wanted a name to pin, a kid to lock away. And Marcus, young, black, in a hoodie, was the perfect fit for their story. Outside, Elmwood Avenue hummed with life, kids laughing, cars passing. Inside, Marcus faced a machine built to crush him. He didn't know a judge named Harold Vance was waiting, ready to bury him deeper. He didn't know his call to his estranged father would spark a fight to tear that machine apart. For now, he was alone, a boy with a sketchbook, caught in a trap he didn't make. The courtroom in Cuyahoga County, Cleveland was nearly empty, just a handful of staff and a bored bailiff under flickering lights. Marcus Hayes, 16, stood in cuffs, a borrowed suit hanging loose on his frame. His mother Laura sat behind him, hands trembling, eyes sunken from weeks of worry. The hearing started fast, no jury, just Judge Harold Vance on the bench, his scowl fixed on Marcus. Docket 2039, State versus Marcus Hayes. The prosecutor, a sharp woman in a navy suit, said. She laid out the case in 2 minutes. A blurry GameStop security photo, a glove from Marcus's backpack, an artist's glove to keep graphite off his hands, and a partial fingerprint marked probable match. Weak evidence, but she spoke like it was ironclad. Tom Grayson, Marcus's public defender, stood awkwardly. My client was at the Carver Library during the alleged robbery, Your Honor. No prior record. Vance cut him off, voice dripping with disdain. Library? Your kind always has a story, don't they? He glared at Marcus, his words heavy with prejudice. Sit down, counsel. Marcus spoke up, desperate. Please, I was at the library. Miss Clara saw me. Vance slammed his gavel. Quiet, boy. This isn't your stage. His tone was venomous, aimed at Marcus's skin, his youth, his existence. Laura gripped the bench, tears falling, but stayed silent, afraid of Vance's wrath. Sophia Torres, the court clerk, typed every word, her pulse racing. She'd seen Vance's files the day before, a traffic cam photo near the library, a GameStop camera malfunction report, glove sizing discrepancies. Now those files were gone, replaced by a thinner folder. She checked the system twice, but fear kept her quiet. Vance ran this courtroom like a king. The judge leaned forward. Evidence is sufficient, bail denied. His gavel hit sharp and final. Marcus turned to Laura, but the bailiff yanked him toward the exit. Laura's mouth opened, no sound escaping, her hands reaching uselessly. Vance never looked at Marcus, already flipping to the next case. Move it along, he snapped. It wasn't a trial. It was a script. Marcus's truth, his library alibi, didn't matter. Vance had decided his guilt before he walked in, another black kid to lock away. Sophia's fingers paused on the keyboard, guilt gnawing. She'd seen Vance bury boys like Marcus before, but this felt different, heavier. 3 weeks later, Marcus sat on a hard bunk in Cuyahoga County Juvenile Detention. Gray walls closing in. The lights never dimmed. time crawling like a wound. His hands, once quick with a pencil, felt empty. During phone call hour, a guard tapped his shoulder. "One call, Hayes, make it quick." Marcus stood, fingers numb. He couldn't call Laura. She couldn't afford collect calls. And what could she do? He dialed a number he'd memorized as a kid, one Laura made him learn for emergencies. It belonged to his father, James Carter, a man he hadn't spoken to in years. James, now U.S. Attorney General, had sent birthday cards long ago, but distance had grown between them. Marcus hadn't needed him, until now. In Washington, D.C., James Carter stood at a podium, mid-press conference, cameras flashing. "Our department is committed to justice and equality," he said, voice steady. His phone buzzed in his pocket. He ignored it, but it buzzed again, an unknown Cleveland number. Something made him pause. "Excuse me," he said, stepping into a quiet hallway, away from the press. He answered. "This is James Carter." Silence, then a breath, then a voice, deeper but familiar. "It's Marcus, your son. I need help." James froze, the words hitting like a punch. "Where are you?" he asked, voice low. "Cuyahoga County Juvenile Lockup," Marcus said. "They say I robbed a GameStop." "I didn't. I was at the library. They gave me life, no parole." His voice cracked, fear breaking through. James leaned against the wall, hand trembling. His son, his boy, locked away, and he hadn't known. "What happened?" James asked, gripping the phone. Marcus's words spilled out. The arrest, the trial, the judge who wouldn't listen. "They didn't check the library footage. They didn't care." James's jaw tightened. He'd built a career on justice, but the system he served had failed his own child. "I'm coming for you," James said, voice firm. "Hold on, Marcus." The call ended, but James didn't move. The hallway was silent. His title, U.S. Attorney General, meaningless against the weight of his son's plea. He'd fight, not as a politician, but as a father. The truth was out there, and he'd tear the system apart to find it. The Cuyahoga County Courthouse in Cleveland, Ohio, buzzed with tension as a new hearing began. Marcus Hayes, 16, stood in cuffs, his borrowed suit still too big, eyes fixed on the floor. His mother, Laura, sat in the front row, hands clenched, hope flickering after weeks of despair. Today was different. James Carter, Marcus's estranged father, stood beside Sophia Torres, the court clerk, ready to challenge the system that caged his son. Judge Harold Vance took the bench, his scowl deepening as he scanned the room. He didn't know James was the U.S. Attorney General, only seeing a man in a plain suit, standing tall next to Sophia. "What's this?" Vance snapped, flipping through papers. "Another appeal? This case is closed." James stepped forward, voice steady. "I'm here for my son, Marcus Hayes. New evidence proves his innocence. We demand a retrial." His words carried weight, but Vance laughed, a sharp, mocking sound. "Your son? You think you're some hotshot lawyer, huh?" He leaned forward, sneering at Marcus. "This kid's a thug just like the rest of them. No retrial." Laura gasped, tears welling, but James didn't flinch. "The evidence was tampered with," he said. "Library footage shows Marcus was nowhere near the crime scene. Files were removed from your system." Sophia nodded, stepping up, her voice firm despite her nerves. "I found the original traffic cam photo and a report on the GameStop camera malfunction. They were deleted before the trial." Vance's eyes narrowed, his face reddening. "You, a clerk, dare accuse me?" He turned to Marcus, voice dripping with prejudice. "Your kind always plays the victim, don't they, crying about libraries and setups?" His words stung, aimed at Marcus's race, his youth. Laura gripped the bench, shaking, but Sophia pressed on. "I have the documents, Your Honor. The glove print was inconclusive, but you pushed it through." The courtroom went quiet, the bailiff shifting uncomfortably. Vance slammed his gavel. "Enough! You're out of line, both of you." He pointed at James, smirking. "Who do you think you are, barging in here with this nonsense? You're no one." James's jaw tightened, but he stayed calm. "Check my credentials, if you doubt me." Vance scoffed, leaning back. "Credentials? You're just another fool defending a criminal." He grabbed his phone, dialing a number, his voice smug. "I'm calling Edward Holt, works in the Attorney General's office. He'll sort this out." He put the call on speaker, confident. "Ed, I've got some nobody here claiming he's big time, stirring up trouble over a robbery case. Marcus Hayes. Tell me he's bluffing. Edward's voice came through, cautious. Describe him, Vance chuckled. Tall, thinks he's a lawyer, got a clerk backing him up, says he's the kid's father. A pause, then Edward's tone shifted, urgent. What's his name? James spoke clearly. James Carter. The line went silent. Vance's smirk faltered, but he pressed on. See, nobody. Get down here, Ed, and shut this down. He hung up, turning to James with a sneer. You're wasting my time. Your boy's staying locked up and you can cry all you want. He glanced at Marcus, his words vicious. Kids like him belong in cages, not libraries. Laura stifled a sob, her hands covering her mouth. Marcus stood still, cuffs biting his wrists, but his eyes met James's, a spark of trust forming. James nodded slightly, a promise in his gaze. Sophia clutched a folder of evidence, her resolve hardening. She'd been silent too long, but not today. Vance kept talking, his voice thick with arrogance. You think you can walk in here and scare me? I've buried cases like this for years, he pointed at Marcus. He's guilty because I say so. The room felt smaller, the air heavy with his prejudice. Every word was a slap, not just to Marcus, but to every kid he'd sentenced without a second thought. James stayed composed, his silence more powerful than Vance's taunts. He knew the truth was coming, carried on Edward Holt's footsteps. Sophia glanced at the door, her heart racing. She'd risked everything to bring those files, to stand with James. Laura whispered a prayer, holding on to hope. The clock ticked, each second stretching. Vance leaned back, smug, thinking he'd won again. He didn't know Edward Holt was minutes away, ready to shatter his world. For now, he ruled the courtroom, his bias on full display, but the tide was turning. Marcus, James, and Sophia stood firm, ready to fight for justice. The Cuyahoga County Courthouse in Cleveland, Ohio, was electric with tension. Marcus Hayes, 16, stood in cuffs, his eyes flicking between his mother, Laura, and his father, James Carter, who faced Judge Harold Vance with unwavering resolve. Sophia Torres, the court clerk, clutched a folder of evidence, her hands steady despite her racing heart. Vance sat smug on the bench, certain he'd crush this challenge, unaware his world was about to collapse. The courtroom door swung open. Edward Holt, a wiry man in a crisp suit, strode in, his face tight. Vance grinned, expecting backup. Ed, tell these people this guy's a fraud, he said, pointing at James. Claims he's some big shot. Holt's eyes widened, locking onto James. This is James Carter, he said, voice low but clear. U.S. Attorney General. The room froze. Vance's smirk vanished, his face paling. What? He stammered, leaning forward. That's impossible. Holt stepped closer, his tone respectful but firm. I work under him, Harold. He's my boss. Laura's breath caught, hope surging. Marcus lifted his head, meeting James's gaze, a spark of trust igniting. Vance scrambled, his voice rising. This is a mistake, I didn't know. He pointed at Marcus, desperate. The kid's guilty, I followed the evidence. James stepped forward, voice like steel. You buried the evidence. Library footage, traffic cams, reports. All gone on your orders. Sophia opened her folder, pulling out documents. I recovered the originals, she said. You deleted files proving Marcus was at the Carver Library. You rigged the case. Vance's hands shook, but he doubled down, sneering at Marcus. He's still one of them. Trouble, all of them. His words, raw with prejudice, echoed in the silent room. Laura gripped the bench, tears falling, but her jaw set with defiance. Sophia pressed on, voice steady. Your nephew runs the juvenile detention center where Marcus was sent. You funneled kids like him there, didn't you? For profit. The bailiff shifted, eyes narrowing at Vance. James handed the judge a dossier. Sentencing logs show you targeted black boys, 94% got maximum sentences, trials under 2 days. You're not just biased, you're corrupt. Vance's face twisted, but before he could speak, a new voice cut through. Judge Evelyn Brooks, presiding over the appeal, stood at the bench, her presence commanding. Enough, she said, adjusting her glasses. Mr. Carter, Ms. Torres, your evidence is compelling. Mr. Vance, your conduct is under scrutiny. She turned to Marcus, her tone soft but firm. Mr. Hayes, is there anything you'd like to say? Marcus stood, cuffs clinking, voice quiet but clear. I just wanted to draw, to make my mom proud. If this helps anyone else, it's enough. He sat, eyes on Laura, who smiled through tears. Brooks nodded, then spoke. Based on new evidence of judicial misconduct and tampered records, this court vacates Marcus Hayes' conviction. You are free. Laura sobbed, reaching for Marcus as the bailiff unlocked his cuffs. But Brooks wasn't done. Mr. Vance, your actions warrant investigation. Officers, detain him. Two deputies stepped forward, cuffing a stunned Vance. This is outrageous, he shouted, struggling. I'm a judge. Brooks's voice was ice. Not anymore. The deputies led him out, his career in ruins. Marcus hugged Laura, her arms tight around him. James stood nearby, a father again, his eyes glistening. Sophia exhaled, her risk rewarded. The courtroom, once Vance's kingdom, now stood for justice. Outside, news trucks gathered, cameras flashing as word spread. A corrupt judge exposed, a boy set free. Weeks later, Marcus stood outside the Carver Library, a pencil in his hand, sketchbook untouched since his release. The world felt bigger, heavier. Cleveland buzzed around him, but he was at a crossroads. His art had freed him. His sketches, shared by inmates, had caught the eye of a local activist. One drawing, a portrait of a cellmate etched in charcoal, now hung in a community exhibit titled Unchained Voices. The exhibit, packed with neighbors and strangers, raised funds for others wrongfully convicted, sparking a movement. Marcus watched the crowd, Laura by his side, her hand warm on his shoulder. A reporter asked, "What's next for you?" He paused, glancing at his sketchbook. He could draw again, chase the scholarship he'd dreamed of, or use his art to fight, to tell the stories of those still locked away. Both paths called, but neither felt certain. James approached, his voice soft. You don't have to decide today, son. Marcus nodded, but the question lingered. His pencil felt like a weapon now, each stroke a choice. As he walked away, a mural of his cellmate's portrait glowed on a nearby wall, the word justice painted beneath it. The crowd chanted his name, their voices rising. Marcus Hayes' story shows that truth and resilience can topple corrupt systems with courage and love. A 16-year-old artist wrongfully jailed by a racist judge was freed when his father, the U.S. Attorney General, exposed the injustice. In life, we face biases that judge us unfairly. Marcus's art, his mom's faith, and a clerk's bravery prove you don't need power, just heart and evidence to spark change. Stand up and use your voice for the silenced. Thanks for vibing with this story. What lesson hit you? Comment below, like, and subscribe for more stories of justice. Keep the fight alive. Your voice counts.